Hey guys, it's Raz, you're Mr. AMG. I love the original SL Gullwing, and I absolutely adore the model. Two ends of this car's history have been, in my opinion, some of the best product that star has ever created. But the time in between, this car has not had a linear evolution. Nothing like something like a 911, which has got a very clear path of being a sports car. The SL has been one of the most confused products in the history of Mercedes-Benz. And that's something that I really wanted to dive into today. We're going to go through the history of every single model of the SL leading up to today's car, which has been wholly made by Mercedes-AMG. No interference from Mercedes, and it's better for it. It is the best AMG that you can buy today, in my opinion. It's obnoxiously loud and it's got a fantastic V8 noise coming from both the 55 and the 63. It's fast, it's dynamic, and it looks absolutely stunning both from inside and that exterior. So today we're going to go over the full history of the SL and then drive the V8 version and see just how fun it is. So guys, today's episode of RBR is once again sponsored by returning sponsor NordVPN. Nord is an incredible app that I have on every one of my devices, from my smartphones to my desktop, my laptop, and even my television. Why? Because it is something that you simply cannot live without if A, you care about your data, and B, you use the internet anywhere but home. So I travel a lot. I could be abroad on a press trip using any old Wi-Fi point. Someone could have set up a malicious one and I wouldn't know any better, and they could steal my financial data, my credit card data. But with Nord on, I've got peace of mind that my data is completely safe. And the other thing that people sleep on with a software like Nord is setting what your current location is via the VPN app. So if I'm abroad and I want to access Netflix or Crunchyroll, which likely the libraries that I have in the UK won't be available in other countries, I can do that. Or similarly, if I'm in the UK and I want to access USA Netflix, I can do that using Nord. And you can even use that on your Android TV. Now, of course, as an RBR viewer, you get a discount. If you use the link below, which is nord.com/RBR, or use the code RBR, you'll get an exclusive discount. And the other great thing is you have a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied, but you need to have a VPN client. It's one of those things that once you start using it, you can't imagine how you lived without. A huge thanks, as always, to Nord for sponsoring RBR and for you guys for supporting our regular sponsors as well. Now, let's get back to the episode. So guys, I can't overstate this enough when I say that the new SL in both 55 and 63 is my favorite new AMG, and I'm just absolutely enamored with the car. But AMG were really given a tough task when they were asked to make this car by Mercedes, because of course this is a fully AMG product with no hand by Mercedes at all. And the reason I say it was such a difficult task is because the name of the SL has been attributed to cars that have been so wildly different that you never expect that they were the same vehicle over its history. So I've been really wanting to do this since this car was released, and that is to go over the full history of the SL. As you know, I love doing with you guys because there's so many cool little facts. And then this car will make more sense to you at the end of it. This all started in 1950. It was just after the war, and Mercedes really keen to get back into racing. And of course, it began with the W194, which was a racing version of the SL. And this came to be because the head of Mercedes Grand Prix then, it was a guy called Alfred Neuber, or he had a nickname of Don Alfredo, or the Fat Man because of his size. He saw a bunch of Jaguar XKs racing at Le Mans with this amazing aerodynamic design and thought, Mercedes need to build a car like this without the unreliability that plagued Jaguar then. So that's where the idea of it came from. Soon after that, prototypes were spotted doing the run on the ring with that now legendary space frame with the tubular structure. And later was born, of course, the W194 as the racing car. Where did the Gullwing hinges come from? Well, because of that tubular structure, you couldn't have a typical door. Jaguar handled it in a different way with doors that kind of went down, but Mercedes then they decided to do the hinges at the top of the roof, which then became this legendary Gullwing car that it's so well known for. Now, if the car hadn't had racing success, we wouldn't have SLs up to today. So of course it did. It won things like the Mille Miglia, 24-hour of Le Mans, 24-hour Nürburgring, and of course the Carrera Panamericana race, which where the whole Carrera Panamericana grill of the modern AMGs now comes from. But the actual customer 300 SL was envisioned by the person who we call the grandfather of the SL. That was Max Hoffman. And he envisioned a 163 mile per hour customer coupe Gullwing. And of course that vision came to life. And I got the immense honor of getting to drive one of these at one of Mercedes' test facilities. And I tell you, it was one of the greatest moments of my car life. So guys, here we are, 300 SL. Thought we should bring Jamie with me because this is a once in a lifetime thing. Maybe it's not, I don't know. I don't know how you top this.
I don't think you can.
How do you top this? Listen to that. What the hell? Listen to it.
It just keeps going. It's still going. You got to 7.
Brakes are very old.
I'm holding on.
Jokes aside though, look at the way it's handling it.
I know.
Speed. What? Once again, thank you Mercedes-Benz Museum, thank you Mercedes-Benz Press. This is incredible. It's been just the best. Absolutely, absolutely mind-blowing that car was, and it was the fastest car in the world at the time, and it's just stood the test of time as such a glorious car. The car straight after this was the 190 SL. This used a less exciting 4-cylinder engine, much of the same kind of design, and this is where you see the kind of the luxury side coming in. It was a much more relaxed car, though they did make then a 300 SL version of this. What's interesting though about this version is that they improved the rear swing axle, so it had less suspension travel, so it was actually better on the limit than the original 300 SL coupe was, which was interesting. And I got to drive again one of these, which was so cool, and I was quite literally blown away by it. Now, no doubt, though the Roadster is a legend, it was your first hint that the SL was about to go softer, and then the next generation cemented it. W113, or as we lovingly know it, the Pagoda, was the next car, totally different. You can see it's much more kind of mass market, easier to produce. It had a removable hardtop, which was called the Pagoda because of that kind of structure. It kind of looks like that. We had a lineup of 6 cylinders, a bigger focus on luxury rather than racing. And that was really cemented by kind of the customer demand, where a vast majority, almost 80% of the cars were spec'd as automatics. That gen sold almost 50,000 cars, which you think is pretty good, until it was completely overshadowed by what followed, which was the R107, which sold over 230,000, almost 250,000 SLs. That's the most that an SL model has ever sold. And for good reason, because Mercedes really went to town on this. And this was during a time where it was actually quite difficult for makers of open-top cars, because the biggest market for open-tops is the USA. And the USA were considering banning open-top cars for safety concerns. So Mercedes in Stuttgart really went to town on the 107, and they made a car that was still familiar in terms of its look to the Pagoda, but so much better in terms of proper crumple zones. We had a roll bar integrated into the windscreen, which you could hardly tell because the shape was still great. We had, again, a greater focus on luxury, better aerodynamics, a bigger engine lineup now ranging up to V8s, but with a heavy focus on emissions as well. And for the first time, we also had a rear bench, which should, again, solidify that idea of a luxury Grand Tourer. And it's one of the things that our car today has actually brought back and is quite an important part of this car's nature. The next car had the unenviable job of following a car that sold 250,000 units, and that was the R129, designed by legendary Mercedes designer Bruno Sacco, who's made some absolute gems. And despite that, he said this was the best looking car that he's ever made in his career, which is, you know, it's big. He's made stuff like the C1118, for example. And this car brought in loads of technical innovations. Just the seats had like 20 patents in them. We had seat belts that would level depending on the height of the driver. We had a roll bar that would lift up. This was hydraulically operated and obviously made the car that much safer. We had active damping as an option. We had self-leveling suspension that came in later so much, and it's no surprise then that this ended up being the heaviest SL. So, you know, super light or super light, only in name, really. But forget all of that, because it was around this time that that little tuner known as AMG was being integrated into Daimler. And they came out with some stunners. First of all, the SL60, which was of course back then the naming matched the engine. So that was a 6-litre V8, incredible looking car even today. Then we had things like the SL70, even rarer, again, you know, 7-litre V12 this time. And then a mad thing, the SL73, which shared its V12 later then with the Pagani Zonda. Absolutely incredible. And of course, this generation, just coming back to it again, also had the rear bench, again, like our car today has, kind of setting it apart from what would happen later on. The next car in the generations was one that was hugely influential for me as a kid, and that was the R230. And I just loved the way this car looks. It was the first to have that innovative folding hardtop, which back then was just like all the rage. And we came out with some really good initial engines. First the SL500, and then we had the SL350, which my dad actually had, we had in the house. I loved that car. And then later we came to the AMG versions as well. So the SL55 with 460 brake horsepower, which is the exact same horsepower, in fact, that our car today has, which I think is a little nod back to that car. And then Mercedes will later do an SL600 V12, which was a Mercedes-Benz version of the vehicle. The rear bench was of course done away in this generation to make room for the operation of the hardtop. And this is all great, and I do love this car. Losing the rear bench, I think it made its life more difficult because it would then be compared directly to other two-seater cars, but it still acquitted itself pretty well. And that's why it lasted so long. This initial phase was about 6 years, then the facelift came, and that lasted like another 6 years. And the big highlight of the facelift has to be the SL65 Black Series, Big Boss. This is the only other time that the SL then again reached for those racing heights that the Gullwing did. And it's an absolute insane thing. 250 kg lighter thanks to the carbon body, fixed roof of course rather than the folding one, a mad V12 in there producing 600 plus brake horsepower, and really rearranging your brain in terms of the relationship between tyre and tarmac. An absolutely mega thing. And like I said, it's that one blip within the history of the SL that still has a bit of racing, until our car today perhaps. After this we had the R231, which always to me looked like a facelift of the R230. It didn't look different enough, but it was actually very different because it had a whole new body made of just aluminium. Mercedes taking learning that they'd gotten from the SLS and bringing it into the SL. So it's about 140 kg lighter than the previous model. We had, of course, all the usual suspects of engines, the 350, 500, etc. AMG now had the SL63 with the 5.5 litre engine, which was a great engine. And indeed the SL65 with the V12. But the problem here was, this was around about the time that AMG were developing a two-seat sports car by themselves without anything to do with Mercedes-Benz. And of course that was the AMG GT. Now the GT is here as a pure AMG sports car. It's lighter, it's stiffer, it's more rigid, it's got a more eventful interior, more eventful exterior. It had the ability to spank a 911 on track, which the SL could never dream of doing. And if you wanted to go luxury, you would just head to an S Coupe instead in this generation, instead of an SL. So really, the car was almost obsolete from the moment that it was released. And I think this was short-sightedness on the part of Mercedes designers. I, as a customer, could see that happening with the GT on the horizon, and they see these stuff, you know, years in advance when they're planning. So that's why I personally think that that previous gen was a bit of a failure, which is why Mercedes recognized the same thing, took on customer feedback and said, right, we give up. AMG, you take responsibility for this product, you're better suited. And this is why I said AMG had such a tough job of melding all of these different models over the years into one cohesive product. But let's be honest, duality of racing and luxury is kind of what AMG does, right? They're the best at it, so who better to come to? And they have made, frankly speaking, a absolutely epic car. Now, this new version of the SL is all new. It's all made by AMG. We've got a whole new mix of materials for our body in white, which is going to be shared with our future GT as well. It's got a hot steel form structure for our windshield to make that super rigid. The rest of the body is a mix of steel, aluminium, mixed fibers, magnesium, etc. So it's really trying to get as light and as rigid as possible. What results versus the previous AMG GT Roadster is a car that's more rigid both transversely and longitudinally by around about 50% in both regards, which is damn good. Then we've got active aero. For example, the air panels on the front that are derived from the AMG GTR. Our underbody is largely covered. We've got an active rear spoiler as well. And if that's not enough, you can option the aerodynamic package for this car as well. Now, of course, rather than the hardtop, we've gone back to the classic 300 SL style of soft top, which is actually quite a glorious thing, I think, in my opinion. This is a new Z-fold roof that is 21 kg lighter than the previous Vario roof, and I just think it helps the entire shape and the look of the car much more. And of course, we've got a GT coming later for your hardtop needs. Now, the performance of the car. We have got, at the moment, 3 different variants. One is the SL43, which is a 4-cylinder that I will be reviewing soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Today we're looking at both V8s, and they both use AMG's famed 4-litre V8 with twin scroll turbochargers. It's a great engine. We've got 2 different outputs in these cars. The SL55 goes to 469 brake horsepower, 700 Newton meters, and a 0 to 60 of around about 3.7 seconds. The 63 is more powerful, 585 brake horsepower, 800 Newton meters, and a quicker 0 to 60. What's the difference between the two of them? In reality, in terms of launch controls, you're going to be quite surprised about, and I will show you that later. But the engine is glorious and it sounds fantastic. So have a listen to it right now. That then pairs with their 9-speed multi-clutch gearbox, which is great rather than going for a city torque converter. So that means we're going to have nice and quick shifts in this. And it's always 4MATIC Plus, so fully variable all-wheel drive. There's no drift mode in the SL, but you do have the ability to have all the power go to the rear if need be, or 50% come to the front, which is great. In terms of suspension, the SL55 gets AMG's ride control suspension, which is a steel-based system. And this has still got adaptive damping, so you've got Comfort, Sport and Sport Plus. We'll talk more about this when we drive it. The 63 gets the more clever active ride control suspension, which has got additional hydraulic elements that help control each spring strut and gives you a wider range between comfort and sportier driving. And it also has semi-active anti-roll stabilization, which again is going to help massively in terms of dynamics. And for the first time, we've got a lift system on these type of cars as well. Both cars get rear wheel steering up to 2.5 degrees, and the SL63 gets the electronic limited slip differential as standard. That's something that the 55 has to option up or won't be available in your territory. So you've got 2 distinctively different cars here. One that's much more of a grand tourer, much more of a muscle car in the 55, and the 63, which is the SL being as dynamic as it can possibly be, or getting as close to the GT as it can without encroaching on its territory. It's an interesting way of doing it. There's quite a price difference between the two of them as well. The 55 coming in the UK around about 140k, the 63 that much more expensive, 160, 170. While we might gawk at these prices, you look at rivals like DB12, which I think this will probably run circles around if we're absolutely honest. All the price of all cars is going up, and you'll see when I drive it, if you're not convinced that it's going to make you smile every day, then I'll change my name to something else, because it genuinely is really fun to drive fast. I'm not saying that the price is right. I don't think it is. I think they would sell way more if it was properly priced at 911 level, but it just makes me smile. It makes me happy. Now, before we head inside, of course, a GT is coming. The GT is going to be sharing a lot of what I've told you about today, but it's going to have its own flavor, and it's very much going to be more sporty. So it's interesting now. You've got the SL which is kind of taking the role of the S63 Cabrio and the old SLs, while the GT is looking to take the role of course, the GT, probably the C63 Coupe a little bit as well, and somewhat the S63 Coupe, at least in the base form for the GT. Who knows if we get a track version in the future. I'm excited to drive that one as well, actually. Anyway, I get distracted easily. Let's go inside. Let's see what the interior of the SL is like. What is it like to live with? What's the boot like? There's a lot to discuss today. Now, the interior of the SL kind of gives away where they were going with this. It does have some of the old SL interior DNA, particularly the position of the vents, etc. But really, it's a lot of AMG GT as well. And it's not just the vent and the driver's zone structure, but it's particularly this, which is what is the Naka duct or V8 engine shaped center console, which when you compare it to the GT version of the last generation, it's almost identical in shape, just missing the nice buttons, which would have been nice. It would have been nice to have those nice buttons in here. There was actually a clay model concept car that Gordon Wagner, head of MB Design, showed on his Instagram that had driving select buttons and other stuff here, like I think 2 of them, and a slightly different steering wheel that looked cooler as well. None of those made production, which is such a shame because it looks so cool. But yeah, this is all very much GT, okay? And the reason that the AMG GT uses the same interior, I think, is that exact reason, because this is very much based on the GT. It's very much a GT Roadster replacement with some added luxury. And you kind of feel that when you're sitting in this car and you're driving it. The other great thing, of course, is the rear seats. I'll get onto that in a minute, and we will throw some kids in the back and see how they're feeling. But this is, it's like AMG GT, but it's just many levels higher in terms of luxury. And I mean that in terms of fit and finish, and more in terms of the technology that you get in the car. For example, we've got heads-up display. One of the best things in the SL is the new digital light. And I never experienced this at night before, but it has this amazing thing where it puts road markings on the ground. For example, you're getting too close to a car or you're treading against your lane. The lights have so many millions of pixels in them. They can project these icons onto the ground, and it looks amazing when you're using it, and it's really actually quite useful. It's not just the cool projection that you get out of the lights when you turn the car on as well, which is awesome. You get the AMG and the Mercedes logo, and it's not just the floor carpet as you're walking up to the car at night, which is so cool. But, you know, it's like the actual safety elements as well. So I was really, really impressed with that. Even blotting out the other cars when you're driving, it's done it in such an accurate way that I've never seen it done in another car. And of course, this is all ripped straight out of S-Class and into SL, which is great. The other thing that's ripped straight out of S-Class and into SL is our middle screen here, which I actually get along with quite a lot. And we'll go into that in a second. One big shame for me is that we didn't get to experience the AMG performance seats. I'm not seeing them on any UK car yet. I'm not even sure if they are available, but I really like those. They're the bucket seat style and they're very, very AMG. These are okay, but the interior spec of this car is a bit boring. The SL55 that I had personally was lovely with a exclusive brown interior, which had some nice stitching, AMG emblems on the head seats and stuff. It was a really nice spec, whereas this is bare basics, so this is basic as it gets. It's still nice with the carbon, etc. But go for some colour in the SL, it's going to look so much better. Speaking of colour in the SL, there is a new program called the Manufacture Program, which is individualization for AMGs finally. And you are allowed to then choose exterior colours and unique interiors, much like BMW Individual or Porsche's PTS. So for example, in this car, we could go for a completely different interior with coloured steering wheel, special stitching on the seats, etc., which looks great in all these different colours. Or you can go for a different exterior colour as well. And there's a big choice, kind of like we get in G-Wagon as well, which is nice. So it's great that they're doing that, and I hope that comes into AMG GT as well. Now let's take a look at first-person view, tinker around a little bit with the system in front of us, and I want to show you the rear seats as well. So that's first-person view inside the SL. Feels very special inside here. Feels very GT, like I said, because of this center console element, which is nice, finished in carbon fiber. I love things like the jet turbine air vents. These are brilliant. They look so cool. They're kind of, you know, retro modern in the best way. I like the way that this interior kind of marries the analog bits with the digital bits, like the fact that we've got a cowl around our driver zone rather than just a flat screen. So much better. Obviously it protects from the light as well, but the way it looks is just a lot more sporty as well. Now, one tip I want to give potential owners is you don't need to use this silly swipey thing to do the roof open or close. You can simply double tap this and then the roof button here will do the job of opening the roof as well. A lot of people were bemoaning that, oh, you can only use the swipey thing, and that's just not the case. You can just use the button as well. So that's what I'm here for, here to give you good advice. Oh, and it does the tilty screen thing. That is to stop glare from happening. If you want it to be tilted, if you don't, just press the button and it'll go back. Really quite simple. A lot of people complain about this screen, but I've actually found it as a driver to be at the exact right height, the exact right size. Nice big buttons for you to be able to click on as well, which is great. So all of this I don't bemoan at all. And then there are some great AMG specific screens in here to give you readouts. So for example, we've got vehicle here, which tells you what's happening with the suspension and power, and indeed your rear wheel steering and your 4MATIC element. Then you've got your geo with your tire pressures, acceleration, braking, etc. We've got the engine readout, which looks absolutely fantastic when the car is on, and you give it some power and you get this wonderful kind of pulse of the engine, which is great. And then one of my favorites, which is the IWC clock. It's actually a working one as well, which is so cool. So you get this chronograph in there, and the cool thing, it actually matches the AMG edition chronograph that IWC make as well. So yeah, very cool. But in terms of actual AMG use, we also have track pace in here as standard, so you can do lap timings, etc. for different circuits around the world. Measure your drag race timings on here as well, and then you can save them to your ID. At the bottom here, your climate is always available, so you never lose that, which is good. It's almost like having physical buttons. We've got the fingerprint sensor here as well, so you can log in with your app, and then all your settings from your car or your last car will transfer into this, which is great. Of course, you get Apple CarPlay, which is massive in here. Look at that. It's great, and the legibility is fantastic, and it's nice that you still have the Mercedes elements still within here, and it's very easy to access with just one tap of the home button. Of course, you've got a load of ambient light options as always. They look great at night, especially, as you can imagine, and they come in multicolor or monochrome. And like I said, you get energizing comfort, you get all these massage options within the car for both passenger and driver, all this stuff coming from S-Class. And because we're going to miss the S-Cab and Coupe, you know, you've got some nice luxury in here that you used to find in those cars as well. So I like the system. I've gotten along well with it. The driver zone as well is one of the best. I couldn't understand some reviewers were saying, oh, it's got a digital screen and no one's going to be able to understand how to use it. It's actually not that difficult. You just press the home button and then you choose what design you want, and that's it. It's really not that difficult, mate. Seriously. And this was actually a young guy talking. So you can go into sport, which is available on normal non-AMGs as well, but with the AMG ones you get more readouts on the side, which is nice because it kind of sets it apart. That changes the theme around the car to red as well, as you can see, which is quite cool. Then we can switch back. You see Super Sport is the main AMG one, and it looks great, particularly when the car is on. Again, when the car is on, you can really see the pulsation in there and the fiery red in the rev tunnel, which is fantastic. The other option that you get in SL is track pace, which is great. And then you get all the information that you would want on track, not that you're probably going to track this. And then we've got a heads-up display, which is quite nice and large. And again, you can choose the design you want, whether it's race, super sport, etc., etc. So all nice and configurable. And again, this is that luxury side of Mercedes creeping its way into the SL and indeed the GT, which is nice. It's nice to have all of that. And again, on the AMG side of things, you've got these fantastic AMG drive unit controls where you can choose your driving mode very quickly while you're driving, rather than messing around over here like a lot of manufacturers. It's all at your fingertips, literally. And the other cool thing is that with these, you can actually configure them within our system here. So for example, we can change the position of the driving mode. So if I want race mode to be right after comfort, I can do that. And now you'll see comfort, race, and then it goes to the others, which is cool. So you can really kind of make this your own. And it's the same with the settings select. I know I've shown this in a few other videos, but it's really important that you guys see this. You can again rearrange them, add your own ones, for example 3D view, so you can have the entire 360 camera thing, which is brilliant, at your fingertips. Sometimes you need it for car parks quickly and you can't find the button, you know, stuff like even the the AMG screens and dynamic select and other bits and pieces. It's up to you what you have in here. And I like the fact that you can customize these to your own liking. So all of that's great. The tech is great. It's all familiar from all your new Mercedes cars. It's a good coffee run car as well because you've got deep cup holders in there, wireless car charging in here, some nice storage space in the middle as well. And then we need to talk about that rear. As you can see, I've got a tiny car seat in there. Let's see if I can get my kids in and how happy they are. Now, my friends, to talk about rear space, we need some volunteers. Luckily, I prepared some earlier, and we have a Mr. AMG 55 and a Mr. AMG 63 behind me. I'm 43 because I'm the slowest of the bunch, right? So they're going to help me, and we're going to see what it's like sitting in the back of the SL for kids. Okay, boys, you ready to sit in the car?
Yeah.
All right, let's get in. Come on. Let's have the quicker one get in the seat here. You want to go there? Yes, we've got a small little car seat for the younger one here. He's going to jump in, and the elder in the front. Oh, look, well done. You never do that normally. So here we've got quite a difference. We've got a teenager behind the driver. We've got toddler behind the main passenger, and it's not that bad, you know, for lesser journeys. What do you think, young man?
Yeah, good.
Don't lie. Tell the truth. Are you okay here?
Yeah.
Comfortable?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, let's see what happens when I sit in the front then. Now the real litmus test is what happens when I actually try to get in and not turn the front seat into a trash compactor for my passenger behind me. How's that now?
I'm
Yeah,
34.
a little bit tight, but like, yeah, I'm alright. It's not especially annoying.
It's okay. I think if you're going on longer journeys, like anything above 45 minutes, it's going to become a bit of a pain for them. But the cool thing is, for someone like me who's got the GT and it's always been two-seater and you can never enjoy it with your favorite people, this and the GT allow you to now do that. You can have your kids in the back or whoever else you want. It is up to 1.5 meters really, the rear. That's who it's designed for. But it's not too bad. Even our front passenger has got decent space. The only thing left is the boot. I think this is cool. As a family man, I value this much higher than having a car that might have been a little bit more dynamic. This car just sounds incredible. It's like something out of the past of AMG. Like one of our old cars back from the peak days of 2016 and 2017. It does not feel like it belongs in the year 2023 as a new car that you can buy. Listen to that. How did one not start the review then talking about the incredible sound of both of these V8s, and they both sound the same. It just makes me smile every time I get in, and it's just the core of the big AMG car, you know, the top dog. It has to have this soundtrack, it just has to. It doesn't work otherwise, and the market has proven it as such. Now to talk about sound, I'm going to first go back down into comfort mode with the exhaust on. And I just want you to listen to the rumble of the car doing no more than 30 miles per hour. Listen to that. That is so beautiful. And really, that's all we look for in a daily when it comes to AMG customers. We're not interested in making huge amounts of noise. We just want to feel and be reminded and feel connected to that V8 hand-built engine under the hood. But it's so important to us at the same time. And this, like I said, this is just comfort mode with the exhaust on, and it sounds mind-blowing. I think that this is one of the best sounding applications of this V8 that they've ever done in the SL. I really hope that the GT sounds like this and builds upon it, because it's absolutely intoxicating. Any AMG guy who I've brought into this car who, like a lot of you, have had reservations over, you know, what is the SL? Oh God, I hope the GT's not like it, which is something I'm going to unpack in a minute. They sat in it, they've just been absolutely blown away by just how emotional this thing is and how capable it is. Now what's nice is if you want to play the V8 like a musical instrument, like us AMG customers love, you can put the car in Sport Plus. What's great is that the ECU and the gearbox are smart enough that you don't bunny hop down the road just to get some sound. It's not overtly jerky, it's very, very smart. So you can just put it into Sport Plus, come off the throttle, you can play it so nicely, and then put it into manual mode, it gets even better. I love this car. In fact, I love it so much, I promise you, I just finished, before I started filming this, I was looking through Auto Trader and Piston Heads for an SL55 again, because I was just reminded how good this car is. I'm kind of working out in my head, what do I sell? How can I afford this? Because this is really the epitome of what AMG is, this car. One big side of that is, of course, the whole sound thing, the whole engine thing, the whole exhaust thing, which, as you can see, sounds brilliant. And the other side is how it marries all the SL's varied history, the S Coupe and Cab, the GT Roadster, into one product. I think it does it really well. Let's talk about how it does the rest of it. First point then, let's get to speed on both the 63 and the 55. We're going to start with the launch control on both and see how the car fares on speed. Let's see how quick the SL63 is, and then we'll also time the SL55. So we're in race mode here. Easy with AMGs, put your foot on the brake and smash the accelerator. Oh, listen, listen, listen. So quick. Oh, that rearranges your brain. And we got a time of 3.3 seconds. 3.3 seconds is brilliant. It's 0.2 quicker than what we've done in the past. So it kind of shows you what a properly running car can do. And the car feels even faster than that when you're doing the launch control. It really, really has no delay at all. SL55 doesn't get race mode, so we'll have to make do with Sport Plus, but let's see what comes out on the Racebox Pro. Clean grip. What did we get? 3.5 seconds. The 55 did spectacularly well as well at 3.5 seconds, which is so close to this in reality. It feels just as quick. And speed is really quite important, particularly in the 63 where you're spending that much more, not just for the dynamism, but for that extra horsepower. You don't want it to feel like a sluggish car, particularly when you'll be going up against things like 911 Turbo. And this does not ever feel slow. In fact, it feels just as quick, particularly thanks to this. Oh, the exhaust note. Of course, a lot of that feeling of speed is assisted by the fact that you've got unlimited traction with the 4MATIC Plus, which is so good. And because of that, the 585 that we have here in the SL63 almost feels too much for the road half the time. I really do think that the 469 horsepower that the 55 has is more than enough, and it never feels slow, but I'm not moaning over the fact that I've got even more in the 63. It feels absolutely unflappable. So the speed, absolutely no complaints. The other great thing is this is a fantastic engine that's so responsive. Over the years, AMG have honed it even more, and their goal from day one was to make it as responsive as a naturally aspirated engine. And to my mind, it's one of the best V8s out there that accomplishes this with flying colors. And I can't think of another bi-turbo engine that gives you the type of natural power curve that you get from a natural engine. It's not quite the same because it never ever will be, but this car and this engine comes really close. And what's also nice is no hybrid assistance, none of that 48 volt stuff that they're putting in the newer cars. It's just that responsive and that good by itself as a pure combustion AMG, and I love that. Now we'll put the car into manual mode with one tap here. AMG customers are quite smug these days because unlike BMW M with their torque converter gearboxes, we have a wonderful multi-clutch gearbox that does what we want exactly when we tell it to. And really that adds a lot to the experience. When you have a good gearbox to support you, it just makes the entire experience of a performance car that much more enjoyable, because you're not discouraged to use the paddles first of all. And really as a driver, when you're driving fast, your expectations are that your inputs are responded to immediately. And even a slightly laggy gearbox can annoy that, and I felt it in my M3 Touring. It's nice to have a multi-clutch, and the 9-speed is pretty good. I don't think it's as snappy as the 7-speed was, but it's pretty damn close. So when you drop gears, it's fairly fast. There's ever so slight hesitation both going up and down. I wonder that when we drive the AMG GT, I'm hoping that's going to be even snappier. It needs to be snappier because the old GT, particularly with my Black Series, was phenomenal. It was, you know, on Porsche level, and I want to see the new GT like that as well. Less bothered if the SL isn't quite as snappy, because that's what the GT is for. And as we said, the SL has to do multiple jobs now. And I was going to say two, it has to do a lot more than two jobs. So one job it has to do is to be a dynamic car like the AMG GT Roadster was. I like the GT Roadster, but it never felt quite right to me because it wasn't quite as dynamic as the coupe, and of course they never can be, but it had a lot of wishy-washiness on the front end when going fast. Now the SL, we know, is already a more rigid car than the GT Roadster, and when you drive it, you feel it. It hasn't got the wishy-washiness that that car kind of suffered from. The front end turn is nice, the steering is nice. Dynamically, actually, it really kind of reminds me of like a condensed GT 4-door, which when you think about it, is kind of what the format of this car is. And by all means, that's not a bad thing. It doesn't feel quite AMG GT 2-door in that way, and I wouldn't expect it to. The steering's really nice, it does give you some good feedback. It gets a little bit numb when you transition from one corner to another, which you find a lot in all-wheel drive cars. I found that with the 911 Turbo as well. That car is a bit sharper, as you would expect it to be, but the SL, particularly in the 63, not that far away. The SL63 is definitely more dynamic than the 55. There's not a massive amount of difference. It's more when you're really, really pushing it, then you appreciate that semi-anti-roll system that's only in the 63 in the UK begins to kick in, and the car is that much more stable than the 55 and just feels like it's fighting against you in the road even less. That's a nice feeling because it makes the car feel smaller than it is. Of course, the rear wheel steer element helps as well, but that's something that you need to get your brain used to. It's quite strange, particularly in lower speeds, and you really need to rearrange your kind of steering inputs to take account for that fact. Once you get used to it though, it only helps you cut the road up even faster, which is why the car looks so bloody quick in some of these driving shots. It's literally because it's like it's on rails, and of course, you know, this is what was started by the AMG GTR, so that's a nice thing. Now for me, the comparison to 911 is a weird one, because you do not get half the fun and the emotion in the 911. What you get in the 911 is much more of a scalpel. This is like Thor's hammer. 911, whether you go for the GTS or the Turbo, as we all say, it's more of a scalpel, right? Less emotion, really good in terms of handling dynamics. It's really unflappable on the road. The SL is not like that. The SL is a supercar experience in a roadster. It's emotional, it makes you smile. It's that car that you want to do the grocery run in, which you don't want to do in the 911. It's your coffee run car. You want to pick this up when you're feeling down and you're having a bad day. The SL is the car that you drive, because every single time you push the start button or you push the accelerator and then come off it, it just makes you so happy. And you can't put a price on that. Well, actually you can, and the price is either 150,000 or 170,000. Go to the used market for now. But jokes aside, everything's getting expensive, and this type of experience you can't find. I don't think you're going to be able to find it anywhere else. Maybe Aston Martin, but would you really risk your money in a product like that? I personally wouldn't, and I think I would go again for one of these. Now, of course, the 911 customer won't be satiated by the things that I just talked about. When I bought my cars, this wasn't what I was looking for in the 911. The 911, I wanted something as dynamic as possible, love the heritage, and love just how impossibly dynamic they are on the road. A 911 driver will come in this and they'll scoff at it because it doesn't do that quite to the same level, and it's very evident from the get-go. You know, the front lift you get on launch control, the kind of slight wishy-washiness versus 911 on the front end and the steering, they will scoff. But the AMG customer gets this car. This is what we're looking for. We are looking for a car that's really quite dynamic, massively emotional, and looks the absolute dog's nads. And in that way, there's no other car that AMG are making at the moment other than the AMG GT that does it as completely and thoroughly as this car does. Of course, where you got that side of the GT, you'd never have something like this in the AMG GT where you're getting a nice massage as if you were sitting in an S63 Cabriolet. Now, it's not as quiet as the S63, nor would I expect it to be. The road noise from your wheel arches is quite significant. The roof sound deadening isn't quite as good as the S-Class as well. Of course, we're trying to reach a balance here between performance car and luxury car. The suspension in comfort, perfectly good, both in 55 and in 63. 63, of course, a little bit better because it's got even more breadth of ability in that sense. But they both fare really well in that regard. And as dailies, they're really quite comfortable. And of course, now we've got the added rear bench. You've also got things like driving assistance package where the car will self-drive. You've got the heads-up display, the 360 camera, self-closing boot lid, etc. And then you see where the SL brings in its luxury heritage and stuff from the S-Class to kind of balance the scales of all the things that the poor car has to do. Then, of course, one final party trick of the SL. As you notice, I've been driving it like a coupe, which is how I drive the car. A lot of us have a mental block when it comes to roadsters and cabriolets that you're like, oh, I would have liked it, but it's a drop top. You don't need to drive it like a drop top. When you've got, you know, a really good roof that you can't even tell is a soft top, why not just drive it like a coupe? Anyway, rant over. The one side of the SL that we're missing is, of course, the roof. Now, I wasn't a massive fan of drop tops. That was until I drove a couple of cars that made me really smile. Both had AMG V8s. One was the Vantage Roadster, and one is actually this car, and no points for guessing why that is. Because of course, we get so much more of that obnoxious V8 sound. As you would expect, it almost kind of doubles in sound. And on a beautiful day like this, there's nothing quite like it as a crazy emotional AMG experience. You do need a different haircut to mine though. Mine doesn't work for this. I don't think dynamics takes a big hit when the roof is down either. It feels good, and you're not likely to go as fast when you're trying to enjoy the sky around you as well. So yeah, it's so emotional, so fun, and this car really has made me appreciate what you guys like about drop tops as well, so definitely has that covered. Nice thing is you can operate the soft top up to speeds above 30 miles an hour, which is nice because then you don't need to stop and do it, and it's all quite natural. With the new V8 SLs, instead of trying to make sense of the complicated and varied history of the SL, AMG have taken the GT Roadster and married the best parts of that car with the best parts of the S63 Cabriolet, in my opinion, and little sprinklings of the SL's history too. And in doing so, has created a car that's more dynamic than any SL before it by a long stretch. More emotional, more fun to drive, but with the right amount of added luxury from S-Class, creating essentially what is the perfect representation of performance luxury, which is what AMG is aiming for. What stands out for me is how it makes you smile. That's what I want you to take away from this review. This is the AMG, alongside hopefully the new GT, that we should all be pining for. They are the correct halo cars for this brand. They are the cars that every other car underneath should be mimicking, even if it is to a lesser degree, with the right engine options. There's no Roadster out there that's more fun than this, and I absolutely love it. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this full review finally of both the SL55 and 63. If you have, please do like and subscribe to RBR. You know what I'm going to do next.